Waiting for the mics. We can't hear anything.
Hello. It is not in our ears.
We don't hear anything. Okay, it's fine. We can't hear anything in our ears at the moment, but apparently it's on over there. I have a strong feeling that they maybe took something from the studio over the weekend, and that's why we can't hear ourselves. You know most how it works. Can you guys hear us? Please just let us know there in the live chat if you can hear us. We can't hear ourselves here in the studio.
We can't hear anything. Apparently everybody can hear us.
There we go. We can hear you. Thank you, Sakes. We cannot take the headsets off. We can't hear. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a hot mess because sometimes things go missing here in the studio, guys. Because
we blame it on the government, Leandra.
Yes, let's do that. But thank you so much for tuning in. It is a rough start to the morning. We also want to apologize for being a whole 10 minutes, 13, 12 minutes late. But we are here now. I prefer listening to myself, man, because I want to hear what is happening. Okay, but also, anyway, you can take it off. It's not working. But thank you so much. If our producer can just fix my headspace, please. I feel like it's a bit too high over there. But it's giving. It's giving. But anyway, let's just get straight into it. Good morning, guys. To my right over here. Hello, my co-hosts. Here comes the man.
Hello. I don't know if it's me or Jess. But hello, guys. We're back here. Back to banter. Back at it.
Yeah, boy.
I feel like when you don't hear yourself, Anka screaming.
But it is. I feel like I'm screaming. Just put your mic thingy right there. The sponge, bro. There we go. But are you fine? Are you happy to be here this morning?
We're speaking to you, Jess.
Is the headsets really messing us up so badly?
Who are you asking?
To both of you, either one.
Yes, we're good. It was a good week. I'll take the lead there, Jess. It was a good week for us. And we're happy that we've reached the middle of the week. We're looking forward to the end of the week.
I want to say good morning to Veronica Lies in the comments. She says that we are on. We are definitely on. Thank you. And then we've got my lovely guest, the one and only, the TK to the S, Sedibe. Takatso, how are you? Good morning. Welcome to the Inside Studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm great. It's really an honor to be here.
Oh, man, that's awesome. So tell us a little more about yourself. Who is Takatso? Who is she not? Who is she going to be? All those things.
Oh, Takatso is currently a student and studying engineering. And
girl, when I hear engineering, I'm just like, it's giving.
Yes, so I'm just a stressed out student at the moment.
Okay, cool. No, lovely. Yes. But so we're going to have this discussion. We are talking about the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, or better known as the BELA Bill. And basically what brought about this conversation is I found, actually my dad sent me this video of this young lady who was at a public hearing committee with the Committee of Basic Education, and it was basically to discuss the BELA Bill, right? And so I posted it on my WhatsApp story status, and then Takatso's like, OMG. Well, she didn't say OMG, but I'm paraphrasing. She's like, I have so much to say about this conversation. So, girl, what was your first thoughts when you saw that video?
My first thoughts was, this is such an aggravating topic.
Yeah.
But I was very impressed with how they had a whole meeting for everyone to just express their views, and that was very nice of them, because then we get to see what the people really think about it before we implement certain laws, and we're given a voice. So I enjoyed watching that. It was 4 hours long.
I'm telling you, oh my gosh. I watched the bits and pieces of it, like everybody from different organizations.
I'm confused. How do we enjoy 4 hours long of this conversation? Like, that's 4 hours of my life I can never have back.
I guess if it's something that you're passionate about or something that really gets you riled up, you want to sit. I can totally see myself sitting and listening to something for 4 hours if I'm passionate.
Your husband
about
watched the whole 5 hours of Andrew Tate.
Yeah, but that's Andrew Tate.
Exactly.
I didn't sit through the entire thing. I was just, I like this one, skip.
Yeah.
I like this part, skip.
Yeah.
And each person was given 3 minutes. So you
Yes.
didn't have to sit through and one person who you didn't like.
That's true. So the particular video that I'm talking about, a young girl from East London. Her name is Tamika Walshy. And she's a homeschooled student. Parents obviously educate her. And so she had her opportunity to address the committee. And she was saying that she strongly opposes the BELA Bill because her main point was that she doesn't want the government to infringe on her parents' rights as both her parents and her educators to teach her what she wants to be taught. But before we get into any of that, I just want to firstly state what the BELA Bill is, or what the amendment to the Basic Laws Amendment Bill is, and then just to highlight some of the major points that it says that it wants to amend. So it is a very long list, but we will only deal with certain aspects of the amendments, right? So it says here, and I found this on Parliament's website, so this is Parliament of RSA, and it says here that these are the amendments. The South African Schools Act of 1996, that was the last time it was amended also, just keep that in mind, to insert and amend certain definitions to provide that attendance of grade R is compulsory, to amend the penalty provision in the case where the parent of a learner or any other person without just cause prevents a learner who is subject to compulsory attendance from attending school, and to create an offence in respect of the interruption, disruption or hindrance of school activities. It's also to enhance the authority of the head of department in relation to the admission of a learner to a public school after consultation with the governing body of the school. To provide that the governing body of a public school must submit the admission and language policies of the public schools to the head of department for approval. To provide that the South African Sign Language has the status of an official language for purposes of learning at the public school, and that the head of department may direct a public school to adopt more than one language of instruction, where it is practical to do so, and that if the head of department issues such a directive, he or she must take all the necessary steps to ensure that the public school receives the necessary resources to enable it to provide adequate tuition in the additional language of instruction, to provide the minister with the authority to appoint a person, an organization, or a group of persons to advise on curriculum and assessment-related matters, to provide that the code of conduct of a public school must take into account the diverse cultural beliefs, religious observances, and medical circumstances of learners at school, to provide for the, it's long, I told you guys, inclusion of an exemption clause in the school of conduct for disciplinary proceedings to be dealt with in an age-appropriate manner and in the best interest of the learner, to refine the provisions relating to the possessions of drugs on school premises or liquor that may be premises or during school activities, and to provide for conditions under which liquor may be possessed, sold or consumed on school premises or during school activities, to refine the provisions relating to suspension and expulsion from public schools by inserting a definition of serious misconduct, to provide for the prohibition of corporal punishment at school activities and at hostels accommodating learners at school, to prohibit initiation practices during school activities, to provide for the designation of a public school as a public school with a specialized focus on talent, to further regulate the merger of public schools. I'm going to stop there and then we can discuss this in more detail. So first and foremost, when you see the amendments to the Basic Education Bill, basically, or Act, the Schools Act, South African Schools Act of 1996, Obviously, we know that transformation is necessary for a progressive state. But what would you say are your supports of the bill, and what would you say? Let's start with support. What of the bill do you support?
I support the part where it is going to be compulsory for children to start school with grade R, so they're going to formalize that part.
Yes.
I think that is the only part I agree with.
Okay.
The rest of it, I am totally against.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll get into that. For you guys, what do you agree with?
I'd say the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of disturbing things on there that really just doesn't, I do not agree with. But I do feel, I mean, I've seen and I know of quite a few kids myself that are not in school yet, that are supposed to be in grade R. And grade R is the stepping stone for grade 1. It prepares that student. So you find that the kids struggle. So they may be, they're not mentally and emotionally prepared for what's to come, and then kids do struggle. So I do think it's important for grade R to be compulsory.
Okay. And you?
I agree with the people here. Firstly, good morning to everyone out there.
I say we didn't greet.
But it took so long in the intro.
Because I thought you were asking Anka.
We were bantering.
To my co-hosts, plural form.
Yeah, but you know.
Guys,
so
are we
you
not
see,
bantering
we
today? I'm
start-
just
Jesse needs to
afraid.
start schooling grade R.
That's why I agree with it. Must
Woke
be
up
compulsory.
and chose violence this morning.
I thought you were speaking to Anka because you know.
Okay,
I thought
I'll
maybe
address you by name.
apartheid times white people first.
Cho. Intense.
That escalated.
Yo. So what do you support?
I support Liverpool. I'm joking.
Of
I
course.
mean, it was a wide range.
I agree with the two ladies here today. I think that one. And then also I think to a certain extent with the alcohol being sold on
School premises.
school premises. Yeah, I don't think there's need for. Are they saying?
Are you supporting the
They're
sale of
making
alcohol?
provisions for
The sale of
selling of alcohol.
Oh, so they say
yeah.
they're gonna sell.
Yes.
Yeah, but for in certain conditions, like for instance with fundraisers, that is what
and I still don't agree with that.
Okay.
I must.
you misinterpreted
Yeah.
what that was.
It's a lot of English.
Exactly.
See why we need grade R.
So for me, I agree once again with grade R being the age of to make grade R compulsory for all learners, right? Because we learn that early childhood development is so critical. It literally sets the trajectory for the rest of a child's life, and that is what is so important. But what I also agree with in terms of language of instruction, specifically bringing in here that to provide that the South African Sign Language has the status of an official language for purposes of learning, I think that it's important. I think that many a times we put emphasis on a whole lot of other things. For instance, and I'll make the example of introducing sex education over, for instance, something as critical as sign language, because oftentimes you don't hear that as the emphasis. And many a times our department doesn't highlight the most important things. For instance, like this is my argument with the rest of the world that we're going to get into now, specifically when it comes to the sex education part, is that you would highlight and you would emphasize introducing sex education to ages of as little as grade 4. Okay, to introduce explicit sexual content to that age group, but you forget about the children that's sitting there that cannot necessarily even understand because they don't know how to read or write, because they didn't get that early childhood development enablement. They didn't start at grade R. They also didn't have access to, for instance, they still have pit latrines, but we are focusing on sex education. There's hundreds and thousands of schools that still have pit latrines, where children, we hear every single year we have a tragedy where a child falls into a pit latrine and drowns. And then things like sign language, things like children that are visually impaired, those kinds of things. Why are we not making provisions for that? But the first thing that we go to is, this is the emphasis, this is what we're going to focus on. So now in
buy
terms
so much
of
material for sex education, buy the children food.
exactly, so let's get into the conversation on some of your opposing views of the bill.
I think also for me, what adds on to the fact that the whole sex education is disturbing is that it's not just sex education, it's sexuality.
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
So now we want to further confuse our kids. Why is this a point of importance? I need to understand
Okay.
why it's important, because first of all, it's my job as a parent
Yeah.
to instill that in my child. So that's what essentially this bill wants to do, is take the rights away from the parents to be able to rear their child up the way that they'd wish, with their moral compass, basically.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, what do you want to do with my child?
Yes.
Where are you taking my child when I know that there's certain, because my children are in homeschooling, but now I'm facing the fear,
reality.
the reality that these things will be introduced to my child in any case. I'm paying a lot of money to avoid this nonsense, just for you to shove it back into my face.
Yes. I don't understand why we need to teach it. We went to school, we're taught about sexual health, condomize, HIV, and we're okay. And we know about sexuality without being taught. So I feel like we don't need to include it, because kids will find out about it. And it will be at their own discretion and the parents' discretion of how much they need to know. But we don't need to be teaching 6-year-olds about
school.
that.
But yeah, that's
not
my point.
important.
We learned about certain things in school, and yes, we had the reproductive and all of that. But at which age? Way in high school.
Yeah, that was in high school. I was introduced to it in high school.
Not in primary school, not at 10 years old.
And we were taught about sexual health,
Yeah.
not sexuality.
Yeah.
Because why do we need to know about your sexuality? That's your personal thing. That does not need to be what they are pushing forward for. So we really don't need to be teaching sexuality to that extent. We shouldn't, actually. We should be teaching sexual health. That's it, and just leaving it there, because what you choose to do is up to you.
I think the worst we had back then was, if your friend has AIDS, how will you comfort him?
Yes.
That was literally what we were dealing with back then.
Yeah.
How would you... Now, it just changed completely. Now they literally showing everything.
Yes,
It's like
explicit content.
Yeah,
I mean, I was
explicit
reading
content.
that they said that.
Maponya on in the classroom and they can watch Maponya.
Yeah.
If you don't
So-
know what's Maponya, it's like you guys
We
know.
can't
what-
say the word on, but in my phone.
Let's just keep it kosher. Anyway.
No, but literally that's what
That
it is.
is.
You might
It's
as
true.
well
I
have
mean,
them.
It's true.
this is the analogy that I always use. Like, my child at some point in her life will have to learn to drive.
Yes.
And, but what sense? My child is 8 years old. At what sense? How does it make sense to you that I give my child now the key to drive now? Remember, she must drive eventually. But it's not gonna be beneficial for her to give her a key now to drive a car now. She's going to bump it. She can't even see over the steering wheel. She needs to be a child. She needs to play outside without fear of anything or make decisions about those stuff right now. They must just play dollhouse. I mean, why are we confusing kids at this age? It just gets me upset and emotional.
It gets me upset to how they want to get into detail about it.
Yeah.
We should be teaching PrEP, PEP, how those work, how accessible they are. I was actually looking up how accessible PrEP is without going to a clinic, and it's not really that accessible. We should be trying to educate them that it's accessible. If you want it, you can go there and get it.
Yeah.
And 1, 2, 3, there's so much that we could be teaching before we get into the depths of what happens.
Yeah.
That we don't need to know. Sexual health should just be sexual health and not be sexuality.
That's my concern. Why are we turning it into sexuality education? It's none of your business. That's my business as a parent with
Yes.
my child.
Exactly.
The chat of the birds and the bees is out the window
It's
now.
out the window. We're no longer doing birds
You
and
got the
bees. We're
birds
going
and the
straight
birds and
into
the bees and the bees.
And you're right about that. I mean, I just want to read something that was posted on the South African Homeschoolers blog, right? And Anka sent this to me, actually, which was a very interesting read. It was posted in 2019, but I mean, it has so much relevance now. How many years? 4 years later. 2020, 2021, 20, yeah. Okay, 4 years later. See, great art. Concerns for families, and this is the title, Concerns for Families and Home Educators. This is specifically with regards to homeschooling, regarding comprehensive sexuality education, implementation in the South African National School Curriculum. So before I get into to the article, What we must keep in mind is that this specifically amendment to the Basic Education Bill, right, or the South African Schools Act of 1996, the amendments to it, is more so for public schools than it is for private schools. So although there is a private school still have some sort of autonomy over what they are taught, over their curriculum and over their materials than what public schools have. But now they're infiltrating an independent organization like homeschooling. And that is, I think, also where the contending issues and where so many people are in uproar, right? So let's just get into what the Homeschoolers Association says, or what homeschoolers say. So it says that the recent uproar about comprehensive sexuality education in the South African national school curriculum is ongoing. And there is a distinct disagreement on whether it benefits or harms learners, like we were saying. There is also conflict regarding transparency and infringement on parents' rights. So that's one of the arguments against it. This article will discuss both these points, along with the impact of homeschoolers of CSE and its inclusion in the BELA Bill. So we are focusing specifically now on the sexuality education, right? So I'm going to stop as we go along. I'm not going to read the full article. I'm going to stop as we go along and then we'll discuss it. So first and foremost, what is CSE? And it says here that comprehensive sexuality education teaches children about the various cognitive, emotional, physical and social aspects of sexuality through a nationally implemented curriculum. According to the Department of Basic Education statement on the 29th of October 2019, it says, and I quote, "The core aim of the CSE is to help learners build an understanding of concepts, content, values, and attitudes related to sexuality, sexual behavior change, as well as leading safe and healthy lives." Now, what is the topics that the SEE covers in the curriculum? And it's as follows. It says that if implemented, the SEE is implemented in grade 4 to 12 lesson plans, right? The Educator Guide of Learner books cover the following topics: relationships, values, rights, culture, and sexuality, understanding gender, violence and staying safe, skills for health and well-being, the human body and development, sexuality and sexual behavior, sexual and reproductive health. Now, how does it connect to the BELA Bill? Well, the BELA Bill will, if passed as law, require all homeschooling families to use a curriculum that covers the same content and skills as the national curriculum. If CSE is not amended or scrapped, it will remain part of the national curriculum, forcing all homeschooling families to cover its contents in their studies. So just as a matter of interest, it says that the CSE was actually first introduced in 2000. So it's not a new concept. It is fairly old, right? And that's an important point to note for later on in the discussion. Now, the implication for homeschoolers. Homeschoolers are independent thinking families who strive to give their children the best education possible based on freedom of choice regarding content and methods. This individualized approach, which enables different cultures and religions to pass on their own values, will be threatened in a very sensitive area if the BELA Bill is passed, with CSE included in the national curriculum. Now it says here that parents will be forced to teach their children information on sexuality that does not necessarily align with their personal, religious convictions and values. And this is an infringement on parental and religious rights. Now, here's a review of what the DBE's claim about the CSE, and this is where we'll get into the conversation. To understand the objections to the SEE, it is necessary to understand and investigate the claims the DBE makes, and this is what they say. They state that their research found that CSE does not sexualize children. Okay, this is their argument. Sexuality education does not increase sexual activity, sexual risk-taking behavior, or STI or HIV infection rates. On the contrary, CSE delays sexual debut and promotes safe sexual behavior, increases knowledge of different aspects of sexuality and the risks of early and intended pregnancy, HIV, and other STIs, decreases the number of sexual partners, reduces sexual risk-taking, increases the use of condoms and other forms of contraceptions. This is what the opposition is.
So it decreases sexual partners.
Yes.
So what does my 10-year-old child have to do with decreased sexual partners if we are not sexualizing the kids?
So here's the problem with this. It says that subsequent studies, and this is important because it just goes to show the for me, the disingenuous nature, once again, of our government and of our departments. Because the problem is, it says that the subsequent studies by the Institute for Research and Evaluation in 2018 and 2019, which uses UNESCO's data, demonstrate a clear risk of harming children. And in fact, it shows the exact opposite result of those stated above. So what do you guys say on those issues, or what the department is basically saying?
They are basically going against democracy, which is having a choice.
Yes.
If you're in the homeschooling section, you have the choice. The parent takes the choice of saying, I'm going to homeschool my kids because I don't want 1, 2, 3 that is in public schools. So I'm going to take it upon myself to teach my kids.
Yes.
So if their parent is not teaching the kids to the standard of the national curriculum, then the consequences are on the parent and the child.
Yes.
But now that's just the minority. And I think every parent wants what's best for their kids. So the parents that do homeschooling are saying it is best for my kid. And what I'm teaching them is the best education that they are getting. So I don't want any involvement of government in that space, because this is where they're practicing their choice and they're practicing democracy. And then in public schools, where now the majority is going and most kids are in public schools, we do not need to include those things, because now we're going against religion, we're going against values of parents, we're going against so much. Whereas if we stick to the umbrella teaching of just sexual health, we are still not compromising religion, we're not compromising values, and we're still letting the parents still parent their kids and expose the kids to what they want. So we're just teaching the umbrella. We don't need to go in depth.
Gotcha.
So for me, the minute you force it upon public schools is the minute you take away the power for the parent of when they want to teach their kids that, how much access do they want their kids to have. And now you are basically saying this is right.
Yeah.
And you're not practicing democracy anymore.
Yeah.
You're not giving them how they want to be taught. I was happy with being taught about sexual health with the birds and the bees. If your mom wants to teach you that, good.
Yes.
But now why do they force that this is the way we're going to teach it and this is the result? They're just forcing it. That's not democratic at all.
And even with sexual health, there's age-appropriate times to do it. If not everybody's fortunate enough to have their children in homeschooling, because homeschooling is not cheap. Not everybody has the privilege of doing that. So if I have my child in a public school, I still expect to have some rights. I still expect to have rights as to what I want my children to be taught or not. I mean, there are certain things that my children have to know for cognitive ability.
Yeah.
There's certain things that they should know to be functional adults. But sexuality education is definitely not one of those, because that has to do with home and morals, which is home-based. We complain about kids being rowdy in classes and having no respect, and it's easy for us to say, but disciplining your children starts from home. Yes, so does moral issues. It starts from home.
Yep.
So why do you want to take that out of my hands? And confuse my child? Now I have to pay for therapy. I have to pay for certain things to get my child back in order, because now my child is struggling with their identity. My child doesn't know who they are. When really it was my responsibility from the first place to instill that in my child. So what social ills are we perpetuating? What social ills are we just putting out there to just grow? What is it? It leads me to think, are there psychologists involved here? Are they behind trying to make money schemes so that we can, there's so much, it's like a big, down a rabbit hole as to the ills that this thing can cause, and then who benefits? Because there's clearly somebody benefiting. Why would you introduce something that's going to knowingly cause trouble if no one's benefiting from it?
I mean, if we look at teenage pregnancy, for instance, right, it's on an all-time high in South Africa. I mean, if we look during the COVID pandemic, during lockdown, I mean, there were girls as young as 10 years old who were giving birth. Yeah. And now my thing is, if this bill, that's the reason why I said, keep in mind when this was introduced, the CSE, it was in 2000. Surely we should have been seeing results of the opposite, as they said here, that it delays sexual debuts. It delays the curiosity. it prevents
By
teenage
introducing it to
pregnancies,
them.
HIV, but we are seeing the complete opposite of this. And I mean, this is what they're saying, that data actually shows, taken from UNESCO, it shows that it's the complete opposite. That there is more infections, that there is more sexual partners amongst younger groupings of children, that there is more teenage pregnancies. I mean, honestly, and you are still pushing this thing. Now you want to infringe on the homeschooling system. Here's a stark look at reality in our country. Which grouping of people, I'm talking about your social status groups, right? LSMs. Which group of people suffer the most with teenage pregnancies, infectious diseases? Which group? It's those in the lower LSM. It's those in public schools. Yes, I'm not saying that children in private schools, and specifically we must talk about it because our country is painted with racial segregation. You will not find it amongst the white population as you would find it amongst the brown and black population. Because you will find sexual activity amongst white children, but informed by parents sitting children down. Not the teacher coming in and telling the children, this is sexuality and this is this and this is where you do. Parents are doing, they're taking responsibility for that. But now you'll find amongst the black and brown community where people are just like, the teenage pregnancy is rife in communities. Teenage pregnancy is rife. I mean, different sexual partners is rife. I'm not saying that it's not a white person phenomena. I'm just saying that it's more prevalent, specifically amongst black and colored. Not even really Indian. You'll very rarely find it amongst the Indian population.
I think with that, I think that's a different can of worms in the sense that with the brown and black population is that certain things are taboo, like contraceptives are taboo, because our parents, and I'm speaking specifically for brown,
yes,
our parents, it was like contraceptive was like no, because that means that you're going to be sexually active, and I feel like they were right, because now that we're introducing these things, it makes children curious, and it's still taboo to a lot of brown parents where they don't introduce contraceptives, whether it be what is this yes and or condoms and stuff like that. Whereas in the white communities, I personally know of a few cases where they teach their children about contraceptives way before they even get curiosity for sex, and that creates the curiosity because they introduce that well in advance, which is why you see a lesser phenomenon of pregnancies in that community.
I think they have not thought about the people who are going to be teaching this, which are the teachers, and they are going to be biased. So you're going to either get the people who are for it, and they're going to shove it down the kid's throat, and they are going to parade for these little girls and boys, and they're going to be basically, a mind of a child is still, you can still mold it how you want. So they can mold that child's thinking, and then you're going to find people who are not for it, not for birth control, not for having sex at all, which is now they're not being realistic. It's happening. Like, people are having sex, but they're not being realistic. Now they're saying no. So now the teachers as well, they are going to be biased. That's why my argument is stick to the umbrella education that just covers the basics. Everything else where you have to have an opinion and you have to have different points of views, leave that to the parents, because parents are still the primary caregivers for these kids, and how they want them to be raised should be up to the parents, not the school.
Well, you're speaking about the umbrella teaching methods, right? The second point that they bring up, which is the Department of Basic Education, they claim that there is no new content that has been added to life orientation subjects in school, to the life orientation subject in school. However, in their own press release and in the introductions to their manuals, it's mentioned that the content was reviewed to better align it with the international technical guidelines of sexuality education. Now, this is where it raises red flags for me. And this is the problem with that. Reviewing for better alignment, by definition, implies change. If you are reviewing, you can't say that there's no new content, but then you say we have reviewed it to align with international technical guidelines, right? It implies change. Secondly, the International Technical Guidelines on Sexuality Education was partly sponsored, red flags, by the pro-abortion agency Planned Parenthood. And it was also rejected by the UN General Assembly. So, you see what? I'm just like, no. If we start involving, because further on in the article, it says here that if you look at some of the sponsors of this SCE and the International Technical Guidelines on Sexuality Education, which is the ITGSE, right? If you look at some of the sponsors, it's very questionable. Your sponsors include those that sponsor drag shows for kids. That sponsors... your sponsors includes Planned Parenthood. Your sponsors include some of the most vile parts of our society. And these are what we are aligning with.
And you're telling me there's no agenda here? There's no hidden agenda here where we want to groom our kids?
Can you see?
For what? Why? Why is it necessary? There's certain things, yes, kids grow up to be adults, which is why certain things need to be introduced at age-appropriate times. And now is not the time. 10 years old is not the time to introduce that. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was doing the lessons for, and I really had to search myself because I work with kids in the Sunday school, and we had to do lessons and with regards to social work, which has to do with, abused children and how to address this. And the way it was addressed was to not awaken this child to something that, in the back of their mind, but to make sure that they feel safe at all times. Is there somebody doing something inappropriate? But it was so carefully structured that this now doesn't awaken something in this child for curiosity. Yes. So why don't we stay there? Because our aim is to protect our children, not to awaken stuff. Why are we awakening things that could have waited for a later stage? This is just exposing our kids to stuff that will just confuse them and deal with things they don't have to deal with at their age.
I mean, they actually, research shows scientifically that physiologically, psychologically, biologically also when it comes to male and female, that the brain is different. It looks different, right? The mass, the shape of the brain, it looks different from a child to an adult. And you will see, because obviously neurological pathways are still being formed. So even like there was, the frontal lobe, which is there where all the our emotions sit, right? And those abilities, it's not fully developed until arguably the age of 22 to 25 years old, right? So premature exposure of content that of a sexual nature specifically to children harms them in significant ways. It might not be that they were physically, that the activity was not physically done on them, but the fact that their brains were exposed to that, that's the reason why the P word is such a, maponya is such a disgusting and evil thing. Because if you are exposed to that prematurely, any form of sexuality, it messes you up. You will hear amongst serial killers, what do they say? It started with exposure to the B word, right? And the thing is, now we are dabbling in this. We are making it part of curriculums. I'm sorry. Going on to the third point, it says that the DBE claims that they have, through various consultation platforms, you were speaking about democracy, this is what they claim, that they have through various consultation platforms allowed for the evolution of the content. Moreover, the school governing body, school management team, teachers and parents are orientated on the lessons, as it is our principle to orientate parents when we introduce new lesson plans, right? So they say that they have had discussions with various groups. But here's the problem. The research that they used to claim positive outcomes was not positively verified by independent studies. In fact, it was disproven. If all the relevant role players, members of the electorate, school governing bodies, teachers and parents were in fact consulted before compilation and implementation of CSE, the outcomes would have been vastly different. Teachers' unions wouldn't be up in arms threatening to strike because they are uncomfortable with teaching the material. The approach was totalitarian, undemocratic, and therefore unconstitutional. As Michael Swain, who is the executive director of Freedom of Religion SA, says, orientation is not consultation. You don't come to me and say, this is what you will teach your child. That's not consultation. That is telling me, you will teach my child this.
Yeah.
You will teach your child this, finish and clear. There's a difference. You can't say, we have been consulting various groups through orientation. What the heck? That makes no sense. It's a complete juxtaposition.
You know, there's so much they could add to LO topics instead of this. Like, for example...
Money. How to manage your money as an adult.
Yes, they could include that. They could include, for example, how, if you're an artisan, what kind of skills and what role you play in the economy. That was not taught in school. I had to learn that once I was in the industry, and I was like, I wish I knew this when I was 18. We don't have a clear roadmap to education if you're not going the varsity route.
Yes.
If you're taking the college route, where does it take you? If you're taking the technicon route, where does it take you? If you're taking the learnership and internship route, where do you end up? We don't learn about this. You learn about this because now you're struggling and you're like, okay, what can I do with my time? You know, and that's if you're interested.
Yes.
That's if.
Yes.
Most people finish matric and then they just sit at home.
Exactly.
But they are trying to push 6. Why?
How is that?
Like, there's so much we could be teaching. There is so much that we need to be learning in LO instead of that. And those things that we'll be learning are going to be things that are positively impacting us as a society.
Exactly.
I have never had once, like, learning about sexuality positively impacting us as a society.
Yeah. Sure, that's
And
so
that's
true.
a scary thought, eh?
That is so true. So the summary of concerns regarding this CSE, and I know that we have actually just focused on the sexuality education, but I feel like it's very important. It's an important aspect to deal with, because what I found is that evil agendas are often masked by virtue signaling, and this is what I mean. That you saw how long the amendment list is, right? And it's a whole lot of like frills and
I had
bells
to
and
read the
whistles
summary
and stuff like that, and I'm like, what is actually, read between the lines here, because this is what governments in general across the globe does, the powers that be. They mask evil agendas with virtue signaling. It's going to help a child. I mean, gender reaffirming surgery for minors. It's going to help a child. It's going to take the suicide rates down. But they don't show you the agenda of big pharma and medical corporations making billions off of the indoctrination and the castration of little boys and the complete removing wombs and stuff like that of little girls. They don't show those things. They show you how it's going to help psychologically.
And they deplatform people who come out afterwards and say, I did the gender reassignment,
Yes.
I did these things, and it didn't work. And now I'm more depressed than I was before I tried this thing. They deplatform those people, they vilify them, they remove their accounts. Why even know gender?
Exactly.
But not only that, the whole thing is basically, okay, it's not new, but it's new in terms of forcing it onto kids the way we're doing it now. And we don't have enough case studies and investigation because the kids are still young. They're not grown up yet.
These are the guinea pigs.
This
This generation is the guinea pigs of the experiment.
They test dummies at this point in time. So you can't say it's going to benefit them, it's going to do this. Because what shows that? Because they haven't grown up
In all of history.
in all of history to actually show this benefited me or what. It's just adults that come out at the end of the day that done the surgeries and all that say, look, this didn't help me, it's not a good decision, stuff like that. But there's no kid that done this at a toddler age and now he's an adult, because it's so new that there's no case study to it. So you can't say it's benefiting them because there's literally no investigation and there's no case studies to it to say that it's benefiting them because they're all
Exactly.
still young. They have no voice for themselves. So how can you say it's benefiting them?
And for those who didn't hear what Xavier's basically saying, if there's no agenda behind it, why are they deplatforming? Why are they vilifying? Why are they cancelling the people who are now detransitioning? For instance, specifically speaking about transgenderism, because this is about sexuality education, and this is where we are going to. Because if they introduce it little by little, that this is who you are, boys can be girls, girls can be boys, those kinds of things. It's just like, why are we exposing kids to these kinds of, why is this the classroom conversation that's happening? Why are we not speaking about, like you were saying? I mean, at that age, why are we not teaching kids robotics? Why are we not, things that kids actually need? Why are we not teaching kids computer literacy? Right? There's still so many schools that have no laboratories. There's so many schools that don't have computer labs. Why is it that the focus is on sexual education? I'm sorry, I am a conspiracy theorist. My mind is just going, what are they trying to mask at this point?
And for me, is the age thing. They have an age for when you can start drinking, which is 18. And some countries is 21. They have an age for so many things. They have an age for,
Gambling.
because they say you're not matured enough. But this, no, you're matured at the age of 10. You can go for surgery. And for me, is they also need, if this is what they're saying, it's not a bad thing, then they should put an age to it at 22 and see how many people are going to do it at the age of 22.
Exactly.
If they're saying at 25 you're matured enough to make those decisions, then yes. And when I think about it, I think of when I was in grade 8, it was the peak of when twerking was a thing. And it was all over the internet and everyone was doing it. And if you didn't have the means to do it, you wanted some kind of surgery. If we had the money, we probably would have at that age because it was so popular.
Yes.
Now it's how many years down the line and we hardly talk about it. And imagine how many kids would have gone for surgery then to enhance and be able to participate in whatever's popping at that time. And then you're 25 and you're like, I actually did not need to do this.
Exactly.
What was the reason?
Yeah.
So now,
Don't show the people who die from those surgeries also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that woman that they buried now in the week.
Yeah.
Well and out.
DC Young Fly's wife.
Yes.
Yeah, she died from a surgery. They don't show it.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's
True.
at that age, you are easily exposed to things that are not right or you think are cool at the
Yes,
time. And then you grow
yes.
up and you realize, actually, I shouldn't have done that. Or you grow up and realize it was just the hype for that specific time in my life. That's why I'm saying if in grade 8, we were given the money without our parents' approval and they said, you can go do BBL.
gosh.
And we did it with our parents, without our parents' consent, and we just went ahead with it. And now we're part of this community of twerkers. Where's the community now?
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
you are left with botched bodies. So much is happening.
Yeah.
So they need to put an age to it because at that age,
Exactly.
you are easily impressed
And
by
also, your
anything and
body has
everything.
your body has not
Developed.
in any sense. What?
And it becomes a thing, even with BBL and those things, you have lifelong complications. So what more do you have with a gender reassignment surgery?
Yeah.
Gender reassignment, even that word is like, what do you mean reassignment? You can't reassign a gender. It's not something you can do. But it's because I can tell my child, right? I have to tell my child 8 o'clock is bedtime because I need to instill rules and discipline in my child. 8 o'clock is bedtime. I need to tell my child, you can't have Coke
Yeah.
at 8 o'clock at night. These
Drink
are
a
things-
full bottle of Coke. I
Oh,
mean,
drink
you're
a-
going to end up with diabetes.
Yes, it's my responsibility for my child to have healthy eating habits because my child needs to grow up into a healthy person. But it is not my responsibility to tell my child that they are a boy or a girl, according to the law,
Yeah.
according to what they want to implement.
Yeah.
I can't tell my child, I am breaking the law if I'm not affirming their fantasies. I mean, let's affirm their imaginary friend.
Yes.
Then
That's
what
a-
happens
I mean,
to
they-
biology? Because I remember life science learning that there's XX and XY chromosome, and we're learning
we're
about.
changing the whole
So what's going to happen to that
subject.
specific
Yeah, it's
subject?
out now.
We are now something that is factual, and we're saying this is what we're teaching and this is the whole subject, and then now we're including that you can either be non-binary, either or, you can be a girl but feel like you're not. Then what happens to that part of education? What are they going to do with that life sciences? Because it is an important module that kids need to learn about it. How are they going to teach it if they're now including the other part of it?
You're so right. I mean, for instance, with menstruation, how are girls going to learn about menstruation? Because I mean, if you are saying that there's no longer XX and XY chromosomes and there's a mixture, and sometimes you get XXY and sometimes you get XYX or what?
And we were taught
GL.
those were when we get the
medical phenomena. It's like it's
one in a
fault
million.
In the but the thing is, even that, I mean, if you're talking about intersex people, right? It's an anomaly. It's
But
not
even they
meant to
say-
be.
Even they say, I'm not a trans or I don't identify as anything, like as a trans woman or whatever. I was born with two, but I have a womb.
Yeah.
I am a woman.
Yeah.
I've got all the parts. Yes, I have an extra part, but they say it's not something that you choose. It's the one that presents itself more over the other one.
So they say that they've been consulting, and this is another issue just before we wrap up and we close. And they say they've been consulting with parents. However, some parents argued that despite their many attempts to interact with the minister, which we know is common practice in South Africa, we find it difficult to reach our heads of states and to reach our ministers and, to get things done. Especially on Clause 37, their pleas were not considered, leaving the committee with an unresearched bill that doesn't cater for the needs of unique learners. There was a complete rejection of Clause 8 of the bill, which proposes regulation on the possession, consumption, or sale of liquor on school premises. The underlying message was that there was a serious challenge of substance abuse in the country, and allowing the sale of alcohol will exacerbate an already dire situation. So now you're not listening to these kinds of conversations that actually hold weight in society, right? But you want to introduce things like sexual education and write a whole curriculum around that according to your sick mentality. So how can the same committee say that participants' perspectives are heard when parents and public and the public are complaining that they haven't succeeded in interacting with the minister? I'm sorry, but I cannot believe all of these things that our departments are busy throwing at us. I was listening to something on the radio this morning, and I know that it's common practice in our country, and it's sad to say this, but in the public sector, I can't remember which department it was. I don't know, was it to do with ESCOM, because they were speaking about ESCOM. But somebody, there's a vacant role since 2001. But this person that was last in that role has been paid monthly for sitting at home. The role has been vacant. There's been nobody that has occupied that role. So for 22 years, they only found out now this year that role is found out this year, that role has been vacant, but the last person in that position is still being paid 22 years down the line sitting at home. So how am I going to trust the state with my children and to teach my children about sexuality? How am I going to trust the state?
When they don't even know what they're doing.
The world is falling.
In-house.
Anua Chebe, things fall apart. That is what's actually happening right now. But anyway, guys, your closing remarks. We have come to the end of the show. We cut it a bit short as well. Well, not short. We're 5:10. But what are your closing remarks with regards to the BELA Bill, specifically because we have been speaking about the comprehensive sexuality education being introduced to the BELA Bill, and now specifically, it's been there all along. It's been the CSE has been part of the ALO curriculum. But now introducing it to independent bodies like homeschooling, and taking away now, infringing on the rights of parents, because this is now a different ball game. I mean, if teachers in South Africa are protesting that they are uncomfortable to have these kinds of conversations with students.
Yeah, no. For me personally, I'm with it. I'm fighting against it because it's not something I'm going to expose my children to. And it's my first responsibility as a parent to protect my children, and I'll stick to that, and I'm staying with that because we have a right, we have human rights. Everyone is fighting for the human. It is my human right to rear up my child in a healthy environment. So yeah, I'm sticking with that, and no, I'm not for this bill at all. And that's it. That's my final remark.
Thank you so much for tuning in here today. For me, I think the government we have now is trying to westernize South Africa more than ever. And we just have bigger problems with trying to take on American situations and issues that they have. And then on top of that, you still see Americans fighting, and not even the Americans themselves is unhappy with the type of things that's happening now in their country, but yet you want to follow and go ahead and do the same thing. It's like you can see the people is fighting, you can see there's
It's not working.
Yeah, you can. There's a left and a right side to it.
Yeah.
And you see it's not working, but yes, you still want to encourage it and bring these things into play. And how does it make sense to say that no kid should have a right to know what they can choose, what they want to be? So if they can choose what they want to be, why are you forcing things then onto them at this point in time? It literally goes against your whole agenda that you're trying to push, because you're forcing this thing, but at the same time you're saying no, they should have a choice. They should be able to choose.
Yes.
But yet you're choosing for them and forcing it onto them. But yeah, that's literally it. I disagree with this whole bill that they wanna bring into. I don't stand for it.
Yeah.
Parents should have a choice to parent.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I mentioned to you also, when it comes to like with me, I would want my children to excel in sports. Obviously, if they're into it and they enjoy it, I would want to homeschool my children then at that point in time and let them focus on something
That they're good at.
Because we see basically people's gonna judge me and stuff. But you see the school system is failing us in terms of that, because literally when you're done with school, like you said, we just sit at home. You don't know what to do. You don't even know how to apply for varsity because you're not even taught that. So it's literally at the point where like I'd rather do these things at home with my children than to just send them to school and learn this rubbish.
Yeah.
My point is, actually, it is happening in the world. The whole educating, the whole educating.
Are you cool?
Someone don't want you to say what you want to say.
The devil is a liar.
I'm choking on my own saliva.
Oh my gosh. Do you need some water?
Jefferson.
Sex education can help you.
Just go get some water, please.
Get water, Jess.
Okay, Takatso will be back. She's fine. She just needs some water and some fresh air. It's okay. She will conclude. We will wait for her. But what I wanted to say, Angs, while we are waiting on that, is that look at the uproar that they made on the Uganda bill, right?
Yeah.
That was passed, where Uganda criminalizes homosexuality. Yeah, in South Africa, they want to criminalize parents for not wanting to teach their children. And it's happening, you don't say that it's far-fetched, because the thing is, if we are going according to international technical guidelines on sex education, we see what's happening in the Western world, right? We see in Sweden, we see in Norway, we see in these countries that were once liberal, and these countries that were embracing homosexuality, transgenderism and all those things, specifically on transgenderism and gender identity, gender ideology. These places that were introducing these educate the curriculum, right? Now they're seeing that it's not working. So but they're criminalizing parents who do not want to affirm the illusion to their 10-year-olds and to their 5-year-olds, right? They're criminalizing those parents. Those parents are going to court. Those parents are being locked up and stuff like that. There's a major uproar when Uganda passed the homosexuality bill. Where's the uproar with currently where people are criminalizing parents for parenting their children?
In the right way.
I
want to say something on that topic, right? Because the same thing happened with COVID, where they forced vaccines on people and they forced to say that this is how it must be. This has been the same thing. Tests have been done that it's good for you. X amount of stats show that this and that. They also fed us the same crap. Now there's people starting to come out saying that the children are autistic. This is going on. I can't feel the whole right side of my body. But they're closing those things. They're concealing that information because they know, we done effed up. So now the thing is, how do you force things on people? Like what Jesse was saying now. That you don't have proof that this is going to work because it's the first time you're trying it. Yes. But you so convincing that it works. How do you even know it works if you don't know? The same thing they did with COVID. They forced it and they convinced us that it works. And then come up afterwards and say, yeah, you'll know we were under pressure to make a vaccine and we told you all it might have side effects. Oh, now you told us it might have side effects. Look what happened to IMJs. Now they're coming out saying, you must dilate, you must shove this thing, you must force it. Yeah, but you knew this was part of the procedure.
And now she's suffering from depression, anxiety,
exactly.
psychological.
Now you want to come back and say, yeah, but we told you guys it's part of the procedure and we told you that it was like a... So you throw us in the deep end and then we drown. You say, yeah, we told you all it was deep. That's basically what you're doing.
Exactly. And this is my argument, right? And that's the reason why I can't think of it as anything else than an agenda. Because why is it so important for us to be sexualizing our children? Why is it so important? That's what I want to know. Like we were saying now, we were fine not learning about the birds and the bees.
Yes.
We were fine.
And we are functional adults.
Exactly.
Healthy functional adults.
Now we're sitting with a situation where this generation is experimenting with Lord knows what. And we must just sit back as parents and be like, okay, obviously I'm not a parent, but I am a godparent, and that makes me a parent, okay? And I'm an aunt, and I'm a critically thinking adult.
Yes.
That knows that this is not okay. We are grooming children, and this is the reason why I say the peds, y'all, they are winning at this point in time.
Because
the argument
in all
will be, and
spheres.
this is what I always say, a lot of people is like, you cannot brush it all with the same paintbrush. I'm like, okay, fine, but you guys, the community, is brushing it with the same paintbrush. We are literally just brushing it all together. Sexuality is sexuality, and anybody is welcome. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
So much so that even people within the community is like, we distance ourselves from this because this is wrong. Thinking critical adults, that's like, can we keep our sexuality private, please? Why must we teach our children about these things? Are you fine, my love?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Are you back?
I'm back.
You wanted to end off.
She went
Yeah.
again.
You wanted to end off with saying,
Let's teach what we are comfortable with.
Yes.
And leave things that are very controversial to the parents. And because we do believe parents know best, and not push it down the throats of parents that we want to teach sexuality in depth like that. That just takes away the democratic part of our society. We don't need to go in depth like that. There's so much to teach, but that we can
It's
leave
not
out.
one of it, yeah.
Yes. We know that as humans, we are very curious, and it is happening.
yes.
It is happening. It's going to happen for the next, we don't know how many years, but let's not teach it, because when we teach it, we are being pro for it, and not everyone is for it. Some
Exactly.
people are against it. It's a very biased topic. How do you teach it? The learning style, what's comfortable, what's right, what does not now go in with religion, what is now, who's against what. It's going to be such a big mess that we have created. We won't know how to clean it up. It's like opening a can of worms. Let's leave it.
I mean, there was a case now recently, once again, in the USA. You know, when the USA coughs, everybody catches a cold, and we're currently experiencing that now in what we can see what's happening across the world. But there was a student that actually recorded a teacher teaching, because it's obviously Pride Month, right? We're talking about sexuality and comprehensive sexuality education. And there was a teacher that was teaching about Pride, and there was Muslim students that was like, okay, if you guys are going to have your Pride thingies, we're not coming to school. We don't want to have part in this. We respectfully decline. And this teacher said, well, if you don't respect Pride, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, then why don't you just get out of the country? Just leave the country altogether, because then this country is not for you, because we embrace everybody. And it's like, I am respectfully practicing my religious freedoms and my rights in a democratic, free society. But you are telling me that I'm not I'm not welcome here because I do not agree with your ideology. You don't agree with my ideology. Many a times you find that Islamic people are being ostracized from communities because of terrorism, and they are painted as the terrorists of the world, right? And they are like, we've dealt with that. We've taken the blows, we've taken the L's, we've taken the knocks, and now that we are exercising our democratic freedom of saying that thank you, but no thank you. It's a public school. I'm not coming. If you guys are going to have your pride parades and whatever the case may be, happy-go-lucky. Everybody enjoy, but we respectfully decline. And it's like, okay, then leave the country. And she's getting aggro with this child. So, yeah, no, Takatso had to step out the game. Shame. She is recovering from a cold. But I just want to say thank you to her in her absence. She's actually in the room over there in the lounge. But thank you so much, Takatso, for being such an amazing guest. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We'd love to have you back. And then to my co-hosts over here, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Always a pleasure. See that you guys are matching today. Yeah, man. Here comes the man and woman in black. Man and woman in black. Okay, she's coming back, so I want to say thank you, Takatso. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being such an amazing guest. So sorry. I think it's also because it's so hot in here.
No, I'm choking on my own saliva. Someone doesn't want to hear the truth.
No, we rebuke the devil. But we thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. We definitely want to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
For more conversation. I know that you were nervous in the beginning, but it was a breeze. So thank you so much. To everybody who watched until this point, thank you so much for getting involved in the comment section. I say thank you to Veronique Goliath, Clayton Kamede, Keegan Aganaya. And Keegan is saying basic means low level. He's talking about basic education. Ooh. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. It was an absolute pleasure. To Xavier also, our producer over there, who came running in because he's so passionate about this topic as well. He's a father and he is a leader in the community and in the church. And so, yeah, he obviously, you know, that this conversation gets him riled up. Thank you so much for everybody who's sharing their insights. And be safe out there. We do have the discretion. I feel like as a democracy, what is the solution going forward? We need to be aware of these kinds of bills. We need to be aware of what bills are being introduced. We must be aware of when there's opportunity for public opinion and public comment on it. We should get involved. We should voice our opinions. We should write to the minister, even if they're not going to see it. We should write to them, have the emails, have the receipts that, you know, we have been pushing for this. Protest should continue because there's teachers that are protesting, saying that they do not want to teach this kind of content to students. So big ups to those teachers. Thank you for taking your stand. Thank you for standing for values and principles and for justice. And to everybody else out there, I hope you have a lovely week further. Until next time, bye.